You think trans people are not going to benefit from universal health care? You think trans people are not going to benefit from lowering the cost of housing? Yeah, of course they're going to benefit. Same with black people. Same with Latino people. This is why left economic populism is very successful. That was the SNL Lib Watch happy hour. We are done with that portion of the broadcast. But let's get back to the real world. But if you were to say, yeah, we're going to watch the By Donkeys, don't worry, led by donkeys. Let's continue.
Now in studio is pollster and communication analyst Frank Luntz. He's been tracking voters in
Hasanabi moot Frank Luntz.
Focus groups with the New York Times throughout 2024. And
once again, I just want to repeat that like Frank Luntz is a right-wing pollster and is a right-wing messaging guy. So just so you understand how right-wing American media is in general, before you say like, oh, well, as a right-wing guy, don't you think that he could have an accurate assessment of like things that are going on? He could like focus group. It's always going to have the biases. Okay. And it should ring some alarm bells, I think, for people maybe that are Democrats. What? That is an insane statement that you just sent. It's a bit too much. That tweet that you sent me was a bit much. Okay. I clicked on it, I read it, and I was like, okay, I can't read that out loud.
And is here with some insights on what unfolded in this historic election. So, Frank, before we get to your focus groups, you admitted quite candidly that you were wrong about something major after the election. You thought this election, if I have you right, was over after the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. What happened?
It simply wasn't. And in the end, the debate did not matter. The public is used to what Trump says. They did not hold it against him. The dogs and cats, which people made fun of, memes were created. It did not impact people because, and one of the things we have to acknowledge is the importance of the truth. We have to tell it.
Well, that was not the truth when he said that.
No, and I thought that would kill him, but it didn't. And one of the things that really matters in elections going forward is we have the responsibility to tell them the truth, and they have the right to get the truth. And quite frankly, we are a different country today than we were even 8 years ago. What we judge people by, sometimes it's ignoring the information becomes more important than what you say. And that was the challenge with Harris.
I'm going to keep repeating the same point over and over again. As material conditions worsen, as people feel more and more anxious and more upset about their circumstances, and as no one seemingly responds to those issues, if the other side is at least like acknowledging and addressing their anger and then channeling it towards whatever avenue they see fit, okay, they're not going to give a about the virulent racism. And sometimes they're going to actually lean into that racism. They're going to believe the racism. Okay. A lot of people will turn around and say, no, you don't understand. America's just like irredeemably racist. There's nothing we can do about it. And it's very frustrating to leave it at that.
Harris, she didn't say enough.
All right. So let's get to your focus groups. You did a series of focus groups with the young voters who were persuadable, undecided late in the summer, and then you went back right before the election after they had voted.
It's so sad that the American left constantly capitulates and supports libs to defeat the far right, and now libs are like, no, leftists, we don't want them. No, I think every leftist understands that liberals are inherently antagonistic towards them. What are you talking about? What leftist is like saying, oh man, we love liberals, like there's nothing we can do? I think that the sobering examination of American politics requires you to come to terms with the reality that we have a duopoly. We have two capitalist parties that represent bourgeois interests, that represents the interests of capital, right? Represents corporate interests only above all else. And that regardless of that, your goal should be to try and force at least one of the two parties into adopting certain frameworks that you have been advocating for. If you can't get the party, the establishment of the party, to recognize that, is this not the same as economic anxiety excuse? No. The reason why it's not the same as the economic anxiety excuse is because I'm not excusing the racism. I'm very correctly calling it out every single day. My problem is when we talk about the solutions to this, okay? When we talk about the solutions to this, I always tell you one thing. You should be uncompromising in defending marginalized communities, but you should also understand where people become more vulnerable, okay? If you don't recognize that economic volatility, economic instability, and people feeling like they have a worse future presented for them than the previous generation, they are going to be infinitely more susceptible to reactionary framing on issues. Okay? That's why I am a firm and committed advocate for Medicare for all, for example. And I always say Medicare for all means all, including Nazis, right? There is no like Medicare except the people I hate, because the goal there is to, at the very least, improve people's material conditions unconditionally so that they are less susceptible to reactionary framing. This does not mean that this will magically cause racism to perish, okay? It doesn't mean that at all. And there will be people who fight tooth and nail every step of the way. But one, it is the right thing to do regardless, okay? Because everyone deserves a life of dignity. And two, the goal is to eliminate the underlying problems that make people more susceptible to right-wing framing in an environment where white supremacist attitudes are taken for granted. That's why Republicans can so easily point to things that are going on, like pre-existing oppressive structures, and say, that's just common sense. That's just common sense. We want more of this common sense.
Early. Let's play a little bit of the conversation we had with them. This was on Zoom. I want to play just a short clip.
How many of you, by show of hands, disliked both candidates? Do you have a negative opinion of both? It is literally every single person here. What does that say to you about American democracy, that you didn't like the Republican or the Democrat? Yes, you go first.
I mean, I think it just shows how polarized we've become, and that, I mean, people vote based on.
Is it polarized? Honestly, I feel like, doesn't it sound like you guys are in unison, collectively decided that you're not polarized? That just like both of the parties suck and don't represent your best interest?
Their party over country. And I mean, it's unfortunate to see. I don't think we'll ever see another election in our lifetime where there's one candidate that truly wins in a Reagan landslide.
Harris ran on the platform of, I'm not Trump. And that's not enough to be a president. You need to have more than, well, I'm better than this person. You got to explain how you're going to fix our democracy, how you're going to make the United States a better place. And I didn't get that from her. And if she's saying, I'm just going to do everything the same as Biden, well, then I have concerns too, because I'm not really happy with the direction that our country is going in terms of inflation and other issues in our economy.
And that was actually the day after the election. So bottom line, what was the factor with these people that were undecided and then broke against Kamala Harris?
They did not like either candidate. That was clear. They thought that Trump was offensive and abusive in his language and polarizing. But in the end, she didn't answer the question that they wanted to know. What are you going to do in the first hour, in the first day, in the first week, the first month, and so on? They felt they had the right to hear this. And if she won't tell them that, then they couldn't give her their vote. And other voters, not just the young voters, felt that she never came clean with what she wanted to do. And the fact that she changed her positions on some issues, she never really explained it.
She talked too much about Trump.
It was too much defining what Trump was.
Not defining herself.
And John, we all know what Trump is. We experienced him for 4 years. Whoever told her to focus on him committed political malpractice. Because in the end, you cannot change someone's point of view on him. It was all about her.
Okay, there was a lot of talk about the gender gap throughout this campaign, usually focusing on how she was doing on women and Trump's problems with women. But you spent some focus groups talking with men who had voted for Hillary Clinton, they had voted for Joe Biden, and then they voted for Donald Trump.
He was their voice. In him, they saw someone who represented them, and with her, they saw, and it was great, young women getting excited for the first time, surrounded by women, talking about issues like abortion. That was great for the female vote. But men felt ignored, they felt forgotten, and they felt like they didn't even matter. And in the end, the Democratic Party has to keep both of them. It is not enough to capture the women's vote. these middle class, middle income, moderate men, I call it M cubed, they're the key to any election, and they felt betrayed by her.
Okay, so before you go, what do Democrats have to do to get competitive again?
How do you win when you lose the union vote? They had the union leadership, but not the union membership. How do you win if you lose Latinos? In fact, a majority of Latino men voted for Trump.
52%.
It's incredible how many traditional Democrats, and the reason why is that she became ideological, and what they want is simple.
Abortion was a great thing to run on, but you also need to run on issues like affecting like all the economy. Look, the campaign was cooked from the start because of Joe Biden. And Joe Biden was cooked from the start because Democrats do not highlight some of the good things that they've done. They just assume that people will figure it out on their own. That's why it was very frustrating for someone like myself, even, who is very antagonistic to the administration for a multitude of different that they engaged in, that like myself and maybe Majority Report were some of the few places where you actually heard about Biden administration's accomplishments. Like, think about that. MSNBC was far too predisposed throughout the duration of this administration with like a whole bunch of weird nonsense, I suspect, instead of genuinely highlighting some of the accomplishments of the administration. Because, yeah, secular talk as well. Like pre-October 2023, there was a lot that you could point to with respect to the accomplishments of the administration. And I certainly did in moments where they did deserve praise. Okay. But throughout the year, you're supposed to do that all the time. It can't be like the Biden's wins account, which also featured a litany of ridiculous nonsense as well. Like the Biden administration was running, at least up until a certain point, I would say maybe even before the midterms, on a anti-corporate billionaire populist strategy. They were directly antagonistic to a lot of big businesses. And yet they were too afraid of describing that. They were too afraid of showcasing that. They were too afraid of even like beefing up the vibes on that front. But ultimately, there was also a lot of stuff that they did that was really bad, really wrong. Okay? And why do they rest on their laurels? I don't know. But that's besides the point anyway, because even someone like myself who is pro-labor union is still not going to overlook the fact that they ran with an incredibly right-wing anti-immigrant strategy that I am completely against, okay? That I think was both parts bad politics and bad policy. And I said it over and over and over again from the moment that they unveiled their right-wing immigration package. Besides that point, though, there was a necessity for expanding the existing welfare state that they simply let expire in many instances, right? SNAP benefits, child tax credits, like profoundly popular expansions of the welfare state were left behind. And they never chose to punish the Republicans for it. And as a matter of fact, if you recall my early assessment, my early analysis, even during the IRA Build Back Better struggle that was happening within Congress, if you go back and watch some of my old videos from that time frame, I was so consistently yelling at the Democratic leadership for not punishing the spoilers from within, okay? There were a lot of moments where it seemed like the Democrats were in a state of panic and in a state of disorder because Joe Manchin was up the strategy. And instead of whipping those votes, instead of coming down with the strength of the state to ensure that Joe Manchin played ball, okay? What is this? Here's you getting mad in June before the infamous debate. Biden. I hate Biden. Biden is a genocidal freak. Why am I talking about his dubs and he's not? Think about that. What the f- are they doing? I cover the news and I have a close, I watch closely what the Democratic Party is doing and what the re-election campaign is doing. And I promise you, I despise Biden, as you guys know. Okay. I have talked significantly more about this administration's W's than the administration itself. What the is going on? Yeah. If you go back even further in time, during the Build Back Better conversations that were taking place, I also regularly yelled about the fact that like Democrats were not whipping these votes internally. And that was making it seem like it was actually the Democrats' fault that there was gridlock, when it was always the Republicans that were universally against all of these policy accomplishments that would be helpful for every American. Republicans rarely have issues with that sort of thing, with the rare exception of like John McCain refusing to strike down Obamacare, refusing to destroy Obamacare. And it's, outside of that very unique circumstance, Republicans are almost always in unison. Democrats never communicated their accomplishments throughout the year. They just never campaign year round in the way that the Republicans do. Republicans never stop campaigning. So not only are they bad across the board. Oh, here, I'm like, I hate her so much. Not only did she vote against increasing the $15 minimum wage because the working. I'm talking about Kirsten Sinema. But she did it in like the worst way possible. Like she did it in the quirky, ooh, look at me, I'm a bisexual Gemini way. People are going to like that's going to trigger the fuck out of so many people. Like obviously some of them are not going to go and like join the Republican Party because like someone decided to do a very conservative thing in the Democratic Party. But my God, dude, like, I mean, I'll just show you. Senator Sinema voting no on the minimum wage amendment. So disrespectful, dude. Like, this is some real boss girl shit. I mean, it literally feels like she was just doing it specifically so she gets this kind of backlash. Yeah, she thought it was her McCain moment. Like, all you're doing is creating more of a rift between those in the middle class, lower middle class, or maybe even like upper middle class, and people who are poor, the working poor pitted against the middle class Americans who feel like they are not getting something out of the government that they thought that they were about to get for no reason whatsoever, because absolutely zero people were like, honestly, we really need to limit the scope of this. Like, who was making that argument? Republicans certainly weren't. Republicans are too busy talking about Mr. Potato Head's cock, okay? That's literally all Republicans have been talking about. They are so insanely hyper-focused on the culture war because they realize that, like, taking a stand, especially in the aftermath of the Trump administration, taking a stand against left-wing economic populism is not going to be good. You think Republicans are going to fucking go out and talk to their newly acquired base or their newly galvanized base of support and tell them like, well, actually, we need austerity measures and we need to be a little bit more responsible because the deficit this, the deficit that. Like, no, that's not. Republicans know that they can't do that. So they talk about Mr. Potato Head's cock and they talk about Dr. Seuss. That's why they've been doing this while there's an ongoing conversation. So let me ask you all this, okay? If you love the Democratic Party, if you literally jerk off the photos of Nancy Pelosi because you have a shrine dedicated to her because you think the Democrats are the best thing that's ever happened, even if you feel that way, even if you're the #1 Democratic Party supporter, okay, explain to me how it is acceptable for Democrats to just take L's over and over again because of a couple psychopaths in their own ranks that literally want to spoil a very popular policy that was the center of the Democratic National Campaign. Like, this is what Joe Biden ran on. Joe Biden ran on increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour, okay? Joe Biden and Georgia directly tied to $2,000 stimmies. What are you doing? Why are you trying to show people like, well, okay, we're actually so bad that even when we claw our way into power, we are not going to fight for it all the way to the end, tooth and nail, and put up an honest to God fight and even push for it and even successfully get this rammed through. Democrats never fight as hard as Republicans do for the action. Just want to remind everybody that $15 minimum wage just passed in the state of Missouri. $15 minimum wage passed in the state of Missouri with a ballot measure. Now tell me, this is my analysis from March 5th, 2021. Yeah, including paid sick leave too. Think about that. Missouri, on the other hand, did not vote blue. What's that about? Actual policy goals that they run on. Republicans run on cutting taxes. They cut it. It doesn't matter. They will kill if they have to, but they're going to cut those taxes. Democrats don't do that. And I'm not seeing a lot of spoiler talks from the National Democratic Party currently in regards to Kyrsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, Hasan, and all these other senators and congresspersons that are operating as spoilers on a very popular policy that 60% of the country wants, even 60% of the constituents in West Virginia want, for example. So what's up? Whenever the left is playing the spoiler because they want to secure more benefits for the working class, they are lambasted. You bring out every... You could have played this on election night. Yeah. I mean, I can just play you all my old videos. That's it. I should just do a rerun channel where I just play all my old takes on every single issue so that people understand that I've been consistent on this stuff for the longest time. And you can tell this from a while ago because, one, I'm in my old apartment, and two, I'm fat as Kaya down. Every Democratic talking head to go on national news and shit all over the progressive caucuses. And all the progressives are like, oh, they're so silly. They're so silly. Why are they spoiling all this? But when Joe Manchin does this, where the is the rest of the Democratic Party shitting on Joe Manchin? Huh? Why are they not applying pressure to Joe Manchin? Why are they not applying pressure to Sinema? Why are they not talking about how these guys are literally pitting the Democratic Party's electoral success? If you don't care about the working poor, because a lot of libs, unfortunately, quite frankly, do not. They only claim to care about it, so they feel morally superior, but they don't actually care about it. So if you don't care about the working poor, but you care about the success of the Democratic Party because that's your team and this is team sports and you want to own the cons, then why the are you allowing Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and a couple other dipshits that are supposedly centrists to ruin this process? Please explain that to me. Almost self-aware. I love when dumbasses come in here and think that I'm just like some silly lib and are like, oh, wow, look at him criticizing the Democratic Party. What an own. Bitch, I criticized the Democratic Party while you were proteining your dad's balls, okay? Shut the up. So they are just hurting their midterm chances. If they don't care about anything else, it's just midterm chances, and they are hurting it, okay? That's great. It's great. You're allowing an opening for the Republicans to literally not take a position at all on the $15 minimum wage. You are allowing Republicans to not come out and say it with their chest that they don't think the working poor deserve $15 an hour. You're literally letting them get away. You lost his aura, bro. This is why I always laugh when people say, Hasan, I used to like him quite a bit, but over the years I realized what a radical he is. Or I used to like him quite a bit, but his positions changed quite dramatically. It's like, no, dumbass, you changed. Okay? No, you changed. You started watching drama perverts and you started filtering all of the opinions that I have through an inherently negative lens. And then you became this massive hater. That's it. I have direct evidence that these positions have remained the same throughout the years, throughout when you first started watching me. That's the problem. That's the issue. The issue is I was right back then. I'm still right now. I've been saying this exact same stuff for the past decade at this point. The only thing that changed is you got algorithm duped into watching like one drama video, and then your entire YouTube feed turned into a Hasan fest, and you now do not actually have the capacity to listen to what I'm saying or even acknowledge the things that I was saying that you used to agree with, and your worldview slowly but surely changed on top of that. It's laughable. It is laughable when people say this stuff. Just like it's laughable when they're like, oh, dude, you're a grifter. You're a grifter. It's like, yeah, dude, I decided to grift in the worst way possible by putting myself in front of a community that is oftentimes directly in support of the things that I'm advocating for, but will still find like minor disagreements to yell at me over. Okay? Yeah. If I was a grifter, I would just grift right wing. It's the easiest thing to do. You don't have to be charismatic. You don't have to be smart. You can just say the things, right? or if I wanted a national media presence, I could just be a liberal. Okay. If I can sell you an idea that most people are inherently antagonistic towards, like a socialist vision, a socialist alternative, then why the do you think I can sell you on liberalism? It's already something that half the country takes for granted. It's all they read, it's all they see in mainstream media. Or conservatism, which is, again, all people on the other side of the political spectrum see and hear in mainstream media, with quietly opposing it, because the entire for independent media, liberalism is in my opinion, for independent media, if you were going to go that route, conservatism is a way easier one to do than liberal, because at the end of the day, liberal perspectives are so common. Liberal perspectives are so easy to find. So differentiating yourself from like MSNBC is going to be hard. Some people do that by being super edgy and advocating to say the N-word as a white guy because they genuinely believe that you should be able to do that, for example. Or highlighting Nazis and cultivating a community of 4chan losers. Some people do that. But even then, to varied success, it's not always very successful. However, what is objectively easy to do is just to be a right-winger, to just be racist, to just constantly complain about how there's diversity and representation in all of the culture and art that you consume, and that sucks. And it makes you feel like a victim, that you're a victim of society. You are being victimized. That's the easiest thing to do. And in the independent media route, there's a massive, massive lane for you. Conversation revolves around the dumbass, supposedly centrist Democrats that are enough, two of them that are enough to ruin this entire process. Anyway, why do you think the Democrats are much more feeble than Republicans? Because they're controlled opposition. They just are. They are controlled opposition. So we've established that there is bad optics of the situation. I don't even think I need to get into the bad policy part of the situation, that like we don't have the $15 minimum wage, because it's not going to pass in a it's not going to pass when the filibuster exists in the Senate. It's not. It's just not going to happen. So that's why this was a one opportunity, one shot, do not miss your chance to blow a type of ordeal for the $15 minimum wage. And stop giving a shite. Thank you for the 10. Give this blew it. It's great. Awesome. Senator Sinema says, this was her statement. Senator Sinema, I understand what it's like to face tough choices while working to meet your family's most basic needs. I also know the difference better wages can make, which is why I helped lead Arizona's effort to pass an index minimum wage in 2006 and strongly supported the voter-approved state minimum wage increase in 2016. No person who works full-time should live in poverty. Senators in both parties have shown support for raising the federal minimum wage, and the Senate should hold an open debate. Yeah, anyway. This video was published on March 15th, 2021. It wasn't just Kirsten Sinema, it was Joe Manchin, it was Maggie Hassan. There's always like a rotating squad of villains. Bob Menendez. And the Democratic Party doesn't do anything to secure their votes. The Republican Party would never allow such a thing, okay? They don't. Yeah, and under the Obama administration, you had Joe Lieberman. But like, my point is, Democrats also personally advance the interests of these people, okay? Harris got the endorsement of Beyonce, J-Lo, Eminem. I thought at least those celeb campaigning will move the needle a bit. No, nobody gives a shit about rich, out-of-touch people endorsing someone. The only reason why they care about the podcast route is because people have a deep and personal connection with podcasters. They have a parasocial relationship with their podcasters. And on top of that, it's not just the podcasters themselves. They get to see a humanized version of this politician that they might vote for. Donald Trump in this circumstance. Celebrity endorsements don't have juice. They don't have motion. It don't mean shit.
Simple common sense. What they want is a meaningful, measurable change from the past. And she's talking about having no difference in her policies versus Joe Biden. The Democrats have to do this examination. And it's not about getting angry with Donald Trump. It's figuring out exactly the words, the phrase.
I'll also take it one step further. This is a quote that I saw earlier on my timeline. During the Vietnam War, every respectable artist in this country was against the war. It was like a laser beam. We were all aimed in the same direction. The power of this weapon turns out to be that of a custard pie dropped from a step ladder 6 feet high. In a sea Weren't you very dismissive about the whole Trump's going on podcast thing? No, originally when he did the Aiden Ross thing, I was, because that didn't track as like positive media overall. But the Theo Vaughn podcast was what changed my perception of everything. Because he very quickly after the Aiden Ross thing went on Theo Vaughn. And I was like, oh my God, this is getting him in front of a lot of people. And it's making him look like a human being and not like a monster. That's when I realized like this is going to be dangerous. Outside of that, however, there's two different ways of looking at the podcast route, podcast bro route. There's a manosphere out there that has tremendous weight. Okay. There's like, these people are not directly in the tank for Trump in many instances, but it doesn't matter. Like the politics that they represent and the communities that they foster are inherently antagonistic towards, you know, women and a variety of different like other marginalized communities. They don't have to openly come out and be in the tank for Donald Trump to present to present an outward right-wing community and cultivate said community. And they exist in this ecosystem where they do sometimes end up cross-pollinating audiences between like people who are directly in the tank for Donald Trump, people who are directly podcasters and independent media figures that are Republican Party operatives, such as like the Daily Wire. Okay. That's also the reason why I said it would be great if Kamala Harris went on Joe Rogan, despite the fact that I don't think she would be able to present herself in the same human way that Donald Trump was able to, just, you know, even though he rambles a lot. You give charitable takes on both sides, which is why I love it here. You don't deserve the hate you get. Most people who hate on you haven't ever been in for a while on stream. It's crazy how much they watch a little clip and assume. Love you. Yeah, I also speak for 8 to 10 hours every single day on politics, polarizing issues. And because of that, it's very easy to clip something completely out of context. Like, this was a major problem with Joe Rogan originally. Early on, he would complain about this all the time, where he's like, I'm talking free flow for 3 hours. Okay. You can, in that process, always misunderstand me. It is what it is. There's not much I can do. And there are still people who are, you know, very much invested in making a dollar here and there to do this kind of shitty smear job. And there's definitely always, as my community has grown, as my career has become more successful, my haters and the and the communities that they've cultivated have also gotten larger. To expand on that Vonnegut quote, my dissertation is completely about how art would currently is catered to the liberal safety net of critique. When any farther left critique occurs, it's celebrated, yes, but then is co-opted by capital and inherently neutered by collector tax racket space. Fair.
And you said it, not just Donald Trump winning the election, but winning the popular vote. First time in 2 decades for a Republican. And how did he do it? He did it by transforming the Republican Party. It is now more diverse than it's ever been in modern times, and certainly much more than when Donald Trump first came on the scene 8 years ago. A lot of ways to look at this. How about this here? When it says pre-Trump, that's the last presidential election.
Someone called you a scumbag, and it literally made me laugh out loud because you're just one of the most consistently passionate, and I assume you meant not terrible creators. It makes me curious to even see your hate videos because I can't imagine. No, if you don't watch me at all, if you don't understand what my worldview is at all, 100%, if you only watch hate videos, you would think I'm a scumbag. Yeah, it makes sense. 400,000. Blame everyone except the politician running the campaign, Lamont. I don't understand why people are so obsessed with not hurting a politician's feelings. I mean, she did only have 100 days to campaign against a guy who's been campaigning for almost a decade. Like, we didn't even get a little slogan. It doesn't seem like there's liberals crying in the chat, in the replies. Yeah, that's how hate videos work, though. Media literacy does not exist in America. Also, if you're busy all the time and you watch like a short little 20-minute video of like, you know, brief snippets that are framed in a very specific direction, yeah, of course you're going to despise me. I get that. I do. 20 minutes is short. Yeah, 20 minutes is short in comparison to an 8-hour stream, Chad. That's what I'm saying. Do you guys not get it? The funniest thing that I've experienced in my career is that I've been very consistent throughout this entire process, right? And one thing that I've noticed that's pretty funny is that the early resentments that people have towards me for being right but too early still carry on, even if they come to agree with my position. I'll give you an example. I'm sure that there are a shit ton of people who are XQC fans or former XQC fans now who still despise me because I was like, kick is bad, stake is bad, cryptocurrency casino is bad, right? And it's going to poison your own content and it's going to, slowly but surely like isolate you, alienate you, that sort of thing, right? And because of that, I got primed against like pretty hard, right? Hasan and the like. People were just like spamming that all the time. That was like a huge thing on the platform. He was the largest at the time. He was the largest content creator on the platform. So every time he shit on me, of course, a lot of people who love him were like, yeah, he's right. This guy sucks. So even though, ironically enough, they might now be former HCC fans who are like, yeah, the gambling stuff like really broke him or whatever. They still also despise me because the early resentment that they had towards my position, which they've now arrived at, has still carried on. And that's it. I don't even fault people for that either. Okay. It is what it is. It's so funny to have like a guy who be like, I hate you, dog, and not really examine why and not really ask themselves why. Because if they were to do so, they would be like, wait a minute, I kind of agree with that assessment now. Maybe I should reconsider. You know what I mean? It is what it is. And it's not just XU. I just use them as one example. There's a million different examples of this, you know?
Before Donald Trump started running, you got to go back to 2012 for that. Remember, 3 straight elections, Trump's been the Republican candidate. So pre-Trump, voters under 30 were.
They will say you were so right about Kamala being a turd and thought you were wrong, but now they know you were right. But I think you made those 20 million stay at home and should have shut up till the election. Yeah. Yeah. People don't understand that at the time when I was making, people don't understand that at the time when I was making those criticisms, I was making them because I wanted Kamala Harris to present a stronger candidacy against Donald Trump. I wanted the Democratic Party not to be like right wing on immigration regardless, because I think it's bad politics and bad policy. But, you know, it is what it is.
We're going for the Democrats by 23 points. Folks with incomes under 50,000, 22 points for the Democrats. Folks without college degrees, 4 points for the Democrats. That's pre-Trump. What comes out of this election? Look at some of these shifts. The youth vote, that Democratic margin cut more than in half. Voters under 50,000, now a Republican constituency. Voters without a college degree, look at that shift. Now a core Republican constituency. And then we can talk about race, ethnicity. This gets into that diversity I mentioned a minute ago. Check this out. Again, pre-Trump versus now. The black vote still overwhelmingly Democratic, but that's a 15-point shift. It used to be 87 points for the Democrats, down to 72. How about this? You've heard a lot about it this week. This is what the numbers look like. Hispanic voters were 44 points Democratic before Donald Trump. Now, basically a toss-up constituency. And Asian Americans, a 32-point shift there as well. That's
one thing to also consider in these conversations is not necessarily that like people who are Asian or Hispanic went from like voting for Joe Biden to then voting for Donald Trump. And there are still plenty of people that did that for sure. But the reason why the percentages look like that is because the Democrats Trump has never said Latinx. Neither has the Democrats. Shut the up. Okay. Kamala Harris not once said Latinx. Maybe at most like back in like 2019 or some shit. But she has not said that. She literally went to Guatemala in like the month of April in 2021 and was like, do not come. Do not come here. We hate you. Do not come. Okay? Stop fantasizing. Stop hallucinating what Democrats are saying and then like make these false assessments. What are you, a Democratic Party campaign staffer? Are you a Democratic Party consultant? Is that what happened? Why are you defending the Dems and their campaign failures by pointing to a thing that they didn't do? God forbid we take a cold, hard look at ourselves. You know what I mean? Holy shit. Nope. Can't do that. So the problem here, as I was trying to explain, the numbers or the data behind the numbers is that it's not necessarily that like all of these people went from voting for Joe Biden to voting for Trump. I'm sure there were Biden and Trump voters for sure. The problem is the base overall that the Democratic Party would activate regularly within the Hispanic Latino population, within the Asian population, within the black population, they just didn't vote. Okay? They didn't. They did not vote. And when they do not vote, then yeah, and the Republicans still turn out the same base, or maybe even turn some people from the Democratic Party's base. This is what happens.
What's happened to the Republican Party since Donald Trump became its standard bearer 8 years ago. This has been the movement.
It's so funny also is like, Have you seen the accusations of hacking? Yes, I've seen a lot of liberals trying to cope. And in that sea of cope, they have decided to do the Republican thing and just like make stuff up. Stable Ronaldo, let's debate. Bro, you'll cook me. I'm fearful. I'm scared.
Take a look at your reaction on the other side.
Bernie Sanders has not won. Let me, with all due respect, and I have a great deal of respect for him, for what he stands for, but I don't respect him saying that the Democratic Party has abandoned the working class families.
Senator, how do you respond to Nancy Pelosi?
Well, Nancy's a friend of mine, and we've worked together on many issues. But here is the reality. I have to say to Nancy, in the Senate in the last 2 years, we have not even brought forth legislation to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, despite the fact that some 20 million people in this country are working for less than $15 an hour. In America today, we have not brought, in the Senate, we have not brought to the floor the PRO Act to make it easier for workers to join unions. We're not talking about defined benefit pension plans so that our elderly can retire with security. We're not talking about lifting the cap on Social Security so that we can extend the solvency of Social Security and raise benefits. Bottom line, if you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mats, taking on powerful special interests and fighting for you? I think the overwhelming answer is no, and that is what has got to change.
Thanks for watching. Stay up.
Yeah, we'll get to Bernie in a second. Let's see the way that like the Republican base has become more diverse, and then after that, we'll get to Bernie's defense of himself.
And meanwhile, for the Democratic Party, the story is the opposite. Pre-Trump versus now. Check out some of these movements. Among white voters, this was a 20-point Republican constituency before Trump. Still a Republican constituency, but a little bit less so. And white voters are such a massive share of the electorate. That 4-point shift, very meaningful. Again, college-educated voters now, a core Democratic constituency. Folks earning more than $100,000 used to be a Republican constituency, now a Democratic constituency. And this gets to, we talk all about the battlegrounds. Trump swept the battlegrounds. But the other big story this week has to do with the popular vote and how Trump pulled that off. Here's one answer. Big blue states with very diverse populations. This new coalition that Donald Trump's assembled, it meant that he didn't win any of these, but he made some giant strides. California, biggest of them all, 29-point Biden win 4 years ago. Currently, only 18 for Harris, her home state. Look at New York. Basically, Trump cutting that Democratic margin in half. Go down this list and look inside those states and you'll see it. Blue-collar areas, cities, metro areas with large Hispanic populations, that's where Trump made his big gains there. We'll land on this one map, one battleground state that I think tells the story of these two coalitions here visually. Let's call up Wisconsin. We know in this election, Wisconsin went to Donald Trump. You're looking at a pre-Trump election because I just want to show you this is what a battleground state like Wisconsin looked like not that long ago. When Barack Obama ran and carried the state over John McCain, look at all the blue here. So many of these are small rural counties with blue-collar populations. Barack Obama could sweep almost all these counties. Democrats were competitive here.
John McCain was a pivotal point for the Republican Party. Under the Obama administration, the Republicans actively did the Tea Party caucus, which was, again, led by the Koch brothers at the time, now Koch brother, because the other one died. But John McCain was the old school, I would say, country club Republican, more moderate in a lot of positions, whereas they wanted to basically hyper-focus on a base that was growing, and they wanted to prime them. So what did they do? McCain was the last Bush Republican. Yeah, you mean George H.W. Bush, though, not George W. Bush. Because I would go so far as to say that George W. Bush was like an in-between, a country club Republican and the Tea Party Republican, the Tea Party style Republican. If we were to bracket the Republican Party, there's like two different aspects to it. Back in the day, you had the William F. Buckley style elitist Republicans who would talk about melting the poor very openly, and they were the party of the elite. Okay. Then Ronald Reagan was the first shot of swapping that out for like a yokel a salt of the earth type person. He was an actor, so I think he was able to basically fit that role, but he still had that country club attitude, okay, despite being a massive populist. George H.W. Bush, on the other hand, was very much so the boring, lame-ass nerd country club Republican. And then George W. Bush was somewhere in between again, okay? H.W. came after Reagan. No, I'm explaining to you how over the years they leaned more and more into the populist, Tea Party, outwardly racist, dare I say, stupid version of the party. Okay? George W. Bush was somewhere in between because he was, also presenting himself as a salt of the earth type person, kind of goofy, kind of silly, kind of telegenic, kind of charismatic. And I think that after that, the Republican Party tried to get back to the old method with John McCain. And then to even less success, they thought John McCain lost because of Sarah Palin. So they brought forward an even more country club style Republican with Mitt Romney. Okay? Obama won both times. And then the rest is history, obviously. You know the rest. You were there for it. Trump, full tilt, went right-wing populist. Full tilt, no more country club Republican bullshit. And seemingly all of the people that left the party in at that time frame, the Lincoln Project people, the former Obama administration consultants, went and found themselves comfortably in the confines of the Democratic Party and have actively tried to change the Democratic Party and successfully have changed the Democratic Party into the image of the country club Republican Party. But Romney was a country club Republican too, which I think ultimately may have been the last straw for Republican insiders who kept losing on the elitist strategy. No, the Republican strategists still wanted to run country club Republicans. What do you mean? And they still are trying to run country club Republicans. They just fail because Donald Trump owns them. There were 18 candidates on that stage. You had the classic weirdos that existed in the Republican primaries as well in the past. The flat tax defenders and people of that sort. But then you had Donald Trump. But if you think about it, most of the people that Donald Trump eviscerated, with the exception of a Ben Carson type, was most of the people that Donald Trump destroyed were Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush. He destroyed them. He destroyed the country club Republicans. He was like, no, you're done. And then, although they were originally against Trump's reign, right, they had to concede because they were like, we have an election that we must win. Ironic, I know, because Donald Trump does own country clubs, but he is not a country club Republican. Come on. Ironic because he is not only a country club owner, but he is also personally a billionaire, which is exactly what country club Republicans were trying to aesthetically represent. Old money types who speak a certain way. So Donald Trump basically smacked the shit out of the rest of the lineup and completely dominated the Republican Party and changed it by force to suit his own vision. That did not stop the Republicans from trying to actively moderate him and bring the party back to their own vision, their own desires. That's why they slapped him with Mike Pence, who was a freak and a phony and a weird evangelical born-again Christian nut job. Having said that, he was very much in the pocket of the Koch brothers. We saw how that ended. And then this last primary cycle, what did they try to do? They literally held separate conferences for Ron DeSantis. They thought Ron DeSantis is our guy. Then they were like, okay, maybe Nikki Haley is our guy. Donald Trump destroyed them as well. And that's it. He forced them to submit. Once again, the Democrats in the process, I know it sounds insane to say, but I believe the Democrats would have beat Trump if they selected a man. No. I still can't believe someone as sauceless as Nikki Haley tried to run. If Nikki Haley was on the ticket, I think she would have done as good as a job as Donald Trump, if not maybe even a better job, honestly. Because why go for the diet version when you have the real thing still comes to mind? Especially when Kamala Harris saw Nikki Haley and literally changed, like tried to emulate Nikki Haley. She was making it seem like this general election was going to be the Republican primary 2.0. And in some respects it was. That's exactly what happened.
Take a look at this map, and I'm going to call up what just happened this week. All that blue has become, look at all that red. All of those blue-collar areas with Donald Trump as the Republican leader for the last 8 years have moved this dramatically to the Republicans, and it's left the Democrats relying more than ever on areas like Madison, Wisconsin, Milwaukee County, areas that have large populations of voters with college degrees, of higher income voters, of progressive voters. And in this election, Kristen, it just wasn't enough for the Democrats to lean on that when they've lost so much ground with blue-collar voters elsewhere.
Steve, it is just striking to look at that map of Wisconsin and, frankly, all the results that you laid out. Now, look, the results are in. They're not going to change. It is worth noting there is still counting going on.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember from 2020, it took about a month till we got all the national popular vote. And let me just show you nationally here, one thing we're waiting on big. We know California is a Harris state, but as I said, still some votes to come. 75% is in. That means there are millions more votes just from California. And there are other states like this. A lot of it has to do with vote by mail, those ballots taking a long time for some of these states. So when you look at where the current popular vote stands, you've got there probably another 10 million or so, when all is said and done, are going to be added to this. This has been the story for a while in states like California. They take a very long time.
All right, let's hear what Bernard had to do. He went through the Sunday circuit.
Bernie Sanders issued a scathing statement after the vice president's loss in what
Chomsky consistently started saying after 2016 that we live in a post-fact world. Would you agree, or do you think the misinformation crisis is more complicated? No, he's 100% on the money. He's so right. And every major institution is participating in that. Dude, if you look no further than the way that every single media outlet covered the story in Amsterdam. Because, like, we know how right-wingers hallucinate an alternative reality and prime their base into believing it. And their entire media ecosystem gets everyone on board with this shit, right? We already know that. But the liberal media space also does that to less success.
What he called a disastrous campaign, saying, quote, "It should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them." And Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont joins me now. Senator Sanders, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here on this Sunday after Election Day. Let's start right there. Your criticism incredibly direct. You say you think the Democratic Party has, quote, abandoned the working class. How exactly do you think Democrats have abandoned the working class, Senator?
Look, the working people of this country are extremely angry. They have a right to be angry. In the richest country in the history of the world, today, the people on top are doing phenomenally well, while 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and millions of families worry that their kids are actually going to have a lower standard of living than they do. You got the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%. We're the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to...
Quick, put some numbers on the board to talk about how things are actually great, like the GDP and the stock market performance, so that we own Bernie in the marketplace of Reddit, you know? I promise, if we just keep talking about the vibe session, down ballot here continues to be awful for Republicans. Arizona Senate Gallego, D plus 15. Nevada, Rosen plus 14. North Carolina Governor Stein plus D11. That's the governor, though. It's different. That just about does it for the House. Dems would have to run the table in all 5 CA races, win Piltolo's race in Alaska, and come back in AZ06 to get a bare 218-217 majority. All of that is unlikely to happen. I think North Carolina's a bit unique, as the Republican candidate had a huge scandal break in October. No, it's actually unique for a different reason and very similar for other reasons. I'll explain. It's unique because it's a gubernatorial race, and split ticket voting on governors' races is super common. It's the most common thing. People have a significantly closer investment to who their governor is because they recognize that their governor changes, their immediate conditions pretty dramatically. That's why you see a lot of blue states with red governors and a lot of red states with blue governors. Kentucky comes to mind. Okay. But it's also the same because both Gallego, Rosen, and Stein's opponents were insane. They were green, they were untested, or they were failures. Like they were multiple time failures. Okay. They were very Trumpian. Mark Robinson saying he's, Black Hitler, or Carrie Lake, the only person who wasn't arrested for storming the Capitol on January 6th. Even though she wasn't there, she was there in spirit and carried on that resentment to her dumbass campaign. Just a psychopath. Or Gallego's opponent was, Gallego's opponent was Carrie Lake. Rosen's opponent was a dude who lost his race in, I believe, Texas beforehand. And Kaya, come here. Kaya, place. Okay, bye. But then how did Brown lose in Ohio? Not as close, and Brown still outperformed Kamala Harris by 15 points or some shit. What are you talking about? That was the consequence that was the consequence, in my opinion, in Ohio of Kamala Harris's performance. Kaya, place. Sherrod Brown got around 100,000 more votes than Kamala Harris. Anyway, let's get back to Bernard.
All of our people, 25% of our seniors are trying to live on $15,000 a year or less. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. And the gap between the people on top and everybody else is getting wider and wider.
Brown outperformed by 7 points, 15, and he probably would have won. I'm sorry.
And then, Kristen, on top of all of that, we got a corrupt campaign finance system which allows billionaires to buy elections. So if you're an average worker out there, you're saying, hey, I'm working longer and longer hours, going nowhere in a hurry, worried about my kids, and yet the people on top have never had it so good. Where is the Democratic Party? Are they prepared to stand up to these powerful corporate interests, raise the minimum wage, fight for health care for all people, make sure that all of our kids get the quality education that they need, expand Social Security? Are they prepared to do those things? That's the issue that we have to address.
Well, as you know, your statement was met with some sharp reaction as well. This is what Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi had to say. Take a look. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Bernie Sanders has not won. Let me, with all due respect, and I have a great deal of respect for him, for what he stands for, but I don't respect him saying that the Democratic Party has abandoned the working class families.
Senator, how do you respond to Nancy Pelosi?
Well, Nancy's a friend of mine, and we've worked together on many issues. But here is the reality. I have to say to Nancy, in the Senate in the last 2 years, we have not even brought forth legislation to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, despite the fact that some 20 million people in this country are working for less than $15 an hour. In America today, we have not brought, in the Senate, we have not brought to the floor the PRO Act to make it easier for workers to join unions. We're not talking about defined benefit pension plans so that our elderly can retire with security. We're not talking about lifting the cap on Social Security so that we can extend the solvency of Social Security and raise benefits. Bottom line, if you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mats, taking on powerful special interests and fighting for you? I think the overwhelming answer is no, and that is what has got to change.
Senator, let me zoom out and just...
Dude, people are, I'm seeing libbing out pretty hard. I used to love you, Bernie, but I'm so disappointed you're validating hate. This is just wrong. Bernie, I love you, but not now. Work on recounts. Democrats lost because they refused to acknowledge Palestine. Okay, that's fair. You can't ignore the country's deep-seated racism and misogyny. Those comments are so out of touch. Agreed. Also, Bernie would have beat Trump in 2016. Okay, that's not bad. How, when Harris spoke of her policies to make the economy better for us and to provide more opportunities for people who purchase homes, etc., we lost because people don't want to see a black woman become president. Like, you are not hearing anything. If that is your analysis of this circumstance, if that's your analysis, you're not hearing anything. Television Man told you $50,000 in tax cuts for small businesses is good, and that's like solid economic policy. Okay? So you're like, what do you mean? Everybody said that that was like the best possible thing to say. And I don't understand it. Like, it doesn't make sense. You misspelled white supremacy, but go off. No, Brady, Democrats lost because the majority of Americans have lost the ability and the interest in telling truth apart from fiction. It's that simple. It's sad because, like, there's so much that is somewhat correct in this assessment. But that's just the table, you know? You can't demand to play a different board game when you're playing Monopoly, okay? You can't be like, well, I think we should play as though we're playing Risk. No, man, you're playing Monopoly. Play by the rules, you know? It just doesn't make sense. Like, the reality of the matter is everyone that says racism and misogyny is a factor in this, or white supremacy is a factor in this, yeah, they're not wrong. Of course it is a factor in this. That's America, okay? That's America. But Trump doesn't play by the rules. That's a fantastic point that you just made. Exactly. Trump never, on the other hand, complains, though, in the sense that, like, his complaints are always echoing the resentment that, like, average Americans feel, even if it's on his own personal key issues. He has a perfect way of tying that back to his own audience. Like, I've never seen another turn around and be like, I mean, he channels that they're not coming after me. They're coming after you. I'm just in the way. Every single argument that he makes is basically that. I've never seen somebody like Donald Trump, a zesty ass, ace, biromantic, you know, queer visibility candidate, a liberal his whole life, a billionaire real estate developer, shits on a golden toilet, lives in an ivory tower, born with a silver spoon, going to, you know, the Rust Belt and complaining about sissy Graydon Carter and his Vanity Fair parties, and have people go, hell yes, sir, you're right. Everything that he complains about, people think he's like shitting on the liberal elite. Okay? I feel like if Kamala Harris ran and was like consistently talking about how racist and white supremacist America was, that would be objectively depressing for her own turnout. Aren't also rich sitting on a golden toilet in your mansion? What? Yes, dude. I am a real estate developer like Donald Trump, who's worth billions of dollars. Oh my God. House chatter still whining? That's crazy, dude. Holy shit. You're close, though? Yes. I'm close to multiple billions of dollars. You're right. Why are VODs locked under subscription? A lot of haters that are combing through the VODs. It is a way to protect you, and it is a way to protect myself. And if they want to do that, then they have to subscribe. You can literally still find the VODs on YouTube if you would like to. Okay? I'm getting mass targeted by a very hostile community.
Ask you about these results. You've heard some of the reaction throughout the Democratic Party.
My VODs are readily available on YouTube.
How much do you personally blame President?
Won't haters be able to clip from YouTube? Yes, but it's just like they go after the chat and stuff. Because if they can't find something on me, then they'll literally be like, well, the chat said this. You know? Look at what his chat is saying. And on YouTube, it's like more difficult and more of a hassle.
Biden for this loss.
President Biden, when he came into office, said that he would be the most progressive president since FDR. And I think on domestic issues, not foreign policy, on domestic issues, he has kept his word. And
I see on YouTube you blur chat now. No, on YouTube I don't blur. I don't blur chat for that reason. I blur it because they just YouTube automatically strikes down your video if your chat shows in like the first couple of minutes.
The agenda that he has pushed through has been an extraordinarily strong one. But that agenda...
Why do they call you the Alex Jones of the left? People don't call me that. There's only one group of people that call me that, one very specific community. And that very specific community is consistently wrong on everything. They rode with Biden all the way to the end because that was stupid. Okay. They greatly overemphasized Kamala Harris's chances of winning, and that was also stupid. They're consistently wrong, you know? But you can be wrong yourself and get your information from that community, or you can be in here and at least, you know, present yourself as a little bit smarter to your friends.
Has got to be placed within the overall context of American society today. And that American society today is one in which tens of millions of working families and elderly people are struggling, while the people on top have never had it so good.
But Senator, should he have gotten out of the race more quickly, as some are arguing?
I'm not going to. I supported him because I think his agenda was a strong agenda, a working class agenda. I'm not going to look backwards. Kamala ran a strong campaign. She did everything that she could. She decisively won the debate. So to me, it's not just about the campaign. It's about what does the Democratic Party stand for? Do ordinary people say, yeah, that is a party that is fighting for my interest and prepared to take on the big money interest who control the economic and political life of the country? That's to me what the issue is.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about the economics. You've talked about how the Democratic Party is out of touch when it comes to economic issues. Some Democrats are saying it's not just economic issues, it's cultural issues as well. Here's what Democratic strategist James Carville had to say. Take a look.
What killed the Democrats and what killed Biden was a sense of disorder. And part of the sense of disorder was the unfortunate events of what I would refer to as the woke era.
Has the Democratic Party's focus on identity politics gone too far, Senator?
Let me answer it this way. I think if the Democratic Party must continue to stand up against all forms of bigotry. And Democrats should hold their head high in saying, we led the fight for women's rights and to protect the woman's constitutional right for abortion. We led the fight for civil rights, for gay rights. That is something we should be proud of. But it's not either or, Chris, and this is the problem. You can do both. You could say that I'm for raising.
I take it one step further. I say one can only happen with the other. Because if you don't win elections, you can't do legislation that protects marginalized communities. And if you want to win elections, you have to have a populist left economic message. You can be uncompromising in your values while simultaneously asking people, does this put food on your table or not? A question I keep repeating to people that come to me on a daily basis about trans rights is always this. Let's say you forcibly reversed the HRT and gender surgeries of every single trans person in America. Does that immediately or even in the future improve your material conditions? Does that put more food on your table? Does that make your shelter more secure? Does that lower the price of rent? Does that actually help you in any meaningful way? Okay? It's not going to lower the price of eggs. Someone has told you that you should focus on this. And in a sea of hate, you decided, yeah, trans people are weird. I actually think that's a right thing to focus on. Okay? That's it. That's it. And the other side of this, in terms of like constantly doing hyper-specific messaging to different identity groups within the base that we understand it of the Democratic Party is also silly. Because it's not like trans people exist in a separate plane of existence. Like they still have the rent. You think trans people are not going to benefit from universal health care? You think trans people are not going to benefit from lowering lowering the cost of housing. Yeah, of course they're going to benefit. Same with black people. Same with Latino people. This is why left economic populism is very successful. Okay? You fight the battles that you have to fight to defend trans people while you simultaneously offer everyone something that gets them on board. You say Medicare for all means for all. It means for you, and it means for trans people too. There's no world where we're like, nah, we're going to gut this. That.
Raising the minimum wage to a living wage, guarantee health care for all people, expanding Social Security. And by the way, I also support a woman's right to control her own body, etc. It's not either or, it's going forward in both directions.
You know, I've been speaking to some Democrats who are concerned because now President-elect Trump has beaten 2 women candidates, and their concern is that it will make it more difficult to nominate a woman candidate in the future. Do you share that concern, Senator?
No, I don't. I think it's not a question. Look, I'm not going to deny that there is sexism in this country, that there's racism, there's homophobia. It's there. But on the other hand, I think what the American people want to support, whether it's a woman, a man, a black or a white or Latino, whatever, is they want to support somebody who is standing up, Kristen, and fighting for them. People are in pain. People are hurting. They can't afford to go to a doctor. They can't afford to send their kids to childcare or to college. They're worried about future generations and what kind of standard of living they will have. Here is the bottom line, and it has to be dealt with. You got an economy today doing phenomenally well for the people on top. It is not working for the working class. All right? How do we address those issues? And in the richest country on the history of the world, create an economy that works for all. That is the issue. And by the way, what Trump did in his election is to say, I know that you're hurting. And the reason is they got millions of people coming across the border illegal. They're eating your dogs. They're eating your cats. He gave an explanation. It happened to be a pretty crazy explanation. Yes, we got to strengthen the borders, but that is not going to raise wages for working people or provide health care to all people. The Democrats need an explanation. And that explanation is corporate greed and the power of the billionaire class. I know that's uncomfortable for people in the Democratic Party, some people, but that is the issue we have to address.
Senator.
Also, I'm done with Gretchen Whitmer as of this very moment. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer will speak today at the Stand Together rally in support of Israel, the U.S. Capitol, organized by Jewish Federations of North America and a conference of presidents of major Jewish American organizations. This is what also Jacob Kornblue says, 2028, ? Watch Governor Gretchen Whitmer in a 6-minute speech.
This bipartisan presence here is a testament to some fundamental truths. We stand with the people of Israel. We share their pain. We are committed to their safety, and we will never forget the horrors of October 7th. We stand against the scourge of anti-Semitism.
Before people go, oh, why do you hate the scourge of anti-Semitism? Why do you hate this kind of messaging? You have to remember once again where and why this kind of thing is being stated. Don't be such a fool, okay? I know that in moments you can clip something and be like, see, Hasan is laughing at the notion of someone bringing up in the Democratic Party's like town hall on CNN talking about how their number one priority as an uncommitted voter is like the hostages and also anti-Semitism on college campuses. You know, it's where you say what you say that matters. And just so you understand, Gretchen Whitmer popping off like this at the Stand Together rally is deliberate, okay? This is happening, not removed, not stripped from the context of Israel's genocide, okay? Israel's committing a genocide, and you're still consistently supporting Israel, okay? Openly supporting Israel. Of course, people who support Israel in the United States of America are not going to support Israel by saying, we love that Israel is killing the Palestinians. It's awesome. They're going to support Israel by saying October 7 happened. October 7, October 7, October 7. They're going to say that by, they're going to lend their support in the most like appropriate messaging possible. So don't be an idiot, Okay? They're going to say that by saying Israel has a right to defend itself. Oh, do you not want Israel to exist? Does Israel not have a right to exist? Do you not want Israel to exist? And a lot of people, unfortunately, get duped by this good messaging, okay? They do not have the capacity to understand that this messaging runs counter to Israel's genocide. This message is happening alongside Israel's genocide, and this message is happening, of course, to justify Israel's genocide.
And we will fight back against this ancient force wherever it rears its ugly head. We must make sure all people feel safe on campus, at work, and in their communities. And we stand for a more inclusive, tolerant future where people from all walks of life can thrive. We believe in the goodness and decency of all people. We pray for the safe return of the hostages, and we will work together toward peace. And now I just want to take a moment to talk about where we are. With yet another national election in the rearview mirror, we must move forward and focus on solving problems. At the close of today's program, we will join together to sing Hatikva, Israel's national anthem. The anthem embodies the enduring spirit of the Jewish people.
I think it's pretty funny that like there's no other equivalent to this in the United States of America. Like there's just no other equivalent to this whatsoever. Like I feel like if they did this for like the Saudi lobby or something, people would be like, what the are you? What do you mean? Like what? I'm sorry, hold up. What? If we had 32 states in the United States of America where it was basically legal to demand that you sign a pledge of loyalty to the state of Israel, that you will never criticize Israel in order to retain a job, but instead substitute Israel for like Estonia, okay? You'd be like, what do you mean? What the are you saying? What do you mean I have to sign a pledge of loyalty that I will never criticize the beautiful state, the beautiful nation state of Estonia? Like, what? What are you saying? Except that is the reality for the nation state of Israel. Yes, 32 states in the United States of America have BDS laws.
Who through every challenge have held fast to their vision of peace, freedom, and security. Our responsibility is to carry forth that spirit.
Her careful messaging before was to keep her governor's seat. Now that she's dropped the pretext, it seems like she's vying for a presidency in 2028. She has shown that she's a careerist monster with no moral compass. Yeah, she didn't want to rock the boat by coming out too much in the tank for Israel, I think, because she knew what her constituencies look like. And she didn't want to hurt the Democratic Party's chances of potentially winning office. But now that like the election is over, you're seeing, you're seeing basically what it is.
It's a brighter future where peace prevails, freedom endures, and communities stand united.
Do you believe that Israel has a right to exist?
Israel does exist. Israel is a recognized member of the United Nations. Besides this, there is not such a thing in international law like a right of a state to exist. Does Italy has a right to exist? Italy exists. Now, if tomorrow Italy and France want to merge and become Ita-France, fine. This is not up to us. What is enshrined in international law is the right of a people to exist. So the state is there, the state of Israel is there, is protected as a member of the United Nations. Does this justify the erasure of another people? Hell no. Not 75 years ago, not 57 years ago, surely not today. Where is the protection of the Palestinian people from erasure, from annexation, from illegal occupation and apartheid? This is what we need to discuss.
Yeah, Israel does not have a right to exist as an apartheid state under international law. So when people say Israel has a right to exist, what they actually mean is Israel has a right to exist in the ways that it does. Okay? And no, Israel does not have a right to exist as an apartheid state. The do you mean? But it's obviously going to be positive framing. That was Francesca Albanese, who I believe is a human rights lawyer for occupied Palestinian territories. the Human Rights Office of the Rapporteur for Occupy Palestinian Territories, UN Rapporteur, Special Rapporteur. Do they consider the possibility by 2028 this will have aged quite poorly? No, I mean, under Donald Trump, who knows? The way I see it is like, the way I see it currently, North Gaza, permanent annexation. That's a lock. What they will do with South Gaza is it remains. I've said already that I think what they're gonna do is basically give Trump like a gimme in the short term. Give Trump like a gimme in the short term. Take a little bit of time off to re-up, rearm, and then permanently annex the West Bank. That's what I think. Because right now, after a year of genocide, I know for a fact that the Israeli economy is lit on fire. I know that the Israeli military is taking a lot of defeats in Lebanon. Like, they don't have the smoke. Will the world stay silent on this monstrosity? I think the world has shown that regardless of their awareness of said monstrosity, that they have an unimaginable tolerance for cruelty that, some of the most defenseless people are subjected to. They just don't give a shit. I mean, we just watched a 40-point Latino swing to a candidate that said that he is going to deport their immediate family members. And if they truly firmly believe that, what? Does Ukraine have a right to exist? Do you condemn the Ottoman Empire? Does Armenia have a right to exist? Sure, you'd say no. What? I've never said that. Dude, if my positions are in the words of Asmongold, if Hasanabi's positions are so bad, why do you consistently feel the need to lie about his positions? Why are you arguing against things that I've never said? Yeah, I'm quoting Asmongold. He did say that. Armenia right to exist? Yes, dumbass. Armenia already exists, just like Francesca Albanese said. What the are you talking about? Like, do you think I'm an Armenian genocide denier? I'm not. The people have a right to exist. States, in the way that they exist, are left up to the standards of how they exist. Israel, as it currently stands, is an apartheid regime. That's it. Israel cannot exist as an apartheid.
Quickly, before I let you go, I do want to ask you about the Supreme Court. Some Democrats behind the scenes quietly talking about the possibility, should Justice Sotomayor step down, to allow President Biden to appoint someone who's younger. She's only 70 years old. Is that something that you would support? Do you think she should step down?
No, I don't.
That was lame, Bernie.
Have you heard any talk of this?
A little bit, yes. I don't think it's a sensible approach.
And you don't think it's a sensible approach?
Correct.
All right. Senator Bernie Sanders.
The only reason why I understand why there's like some level of resistance towards this is because the Democrats are not going to be able to replace her. Like, the Republicans will just stop them from replacing somehow. They're too afraid that in the lame duck session, they'll be like, no, you can't do it.
Sanders, thank you very much for your time this morning and your perspective. We really appreciate it.
While the Democratic Party grapples with their repudiation at the ballot box, independent Senator Bernie Sanders issued a particularly blistering statement this week, accusing Democrats of abandoning the working class.
What do you mean somehow there are only 49 senators right now that would vote yay? I'm willing to bet there's less.
And Senator Bernie Sanders is here with me now. Hello, Senator. Congratulations on your reelection. Nice to have you here. I want to start with the scathing response that you gave after the Democrats lost, Kamala Harris lost pretty big. You said the Democrats abandoned the working class. The chairman of the DNC called it straight up BS and said Joe Biden is the most pro-worker president of my lifetime. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she disagreed with you. She added, quote, Bernie Sanders has not won. Do you stand by what you said?
Oh, absolutely. Look, Joe Biden is a friend of mine. I've been proud to work with him on an agenda which has been very strongly in favor of the working class. Biden promised to be the most progressive president since FDR. In many ways, on domestic issues, I think he kept his word. But here is the reality. The working class of this country is angry, and they have a reason to be angry. We are living in an economy today, Donna, where the people on top are doing phenomenally well, while 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. 25% of elderly people are trying to get by on $15,000 a year or less. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth, and parents all over this country worry that their kids may have a lower standard of living than they do. That is the economic reality. And what Donald Trump did is provided an explanation. He went around, he said, I know you're angry, and the reason is that zillions of illegal immigrants are coming over, and they're eating your cats and dogs and everything else. That's the reason. Well, obviously, that is not the reason. The reason is, in my view, that we have an unprecedented level of corporate greed today, more income and wealth inequality, and people on top want it all. And we need an agenda that says to the working class, we're going to take on these powerful special interests and create an economy and a government that works for you. And by the way, that can't happen unless you get big money out of politics. We got to get rid of the Citizens United Supreme Court decision so billionaires do not continue to buy elections.
And I know that you heard President Biden and Vice President Harris tout over and over the record of supporting workers, helping the middle class, some of the things that you were instrumental in helping pass, like lowering the cost of insulin. You saw the president walking a picket line. They forgave student loan debt as much as they could. You said yourself in July that he had a strong record, which you just repeated here. So it sounds like it's not maybe as much about policies and more about messaging and communication.
It's not messaging, Donna. It's a fundamental understanding of saying, look, the Biden administration has done a lot of good things, period.
I agree.
We should all be proud of that. But it has to be put in the broad context of the reality of the American economy today. And that is when you have three people on top owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society. When you have millions and millions of people working for starvation wages.
This is what Kamala should have done too. Like, expand upon the accomplishments of the administration and say it's not enough and we are going to go way beyond.
You got to speak to that reality. So you could say, look, we're proud of what we have accomplished, but we have so much more to do to create the kind.
I gave you a week off because you asked true or false is Hasanabi the Benny Johnson of the left. Benny Johnson wishes he had my real motion. I'm not propped up by the institutions in the same way that he is. When you come back in the next week, if you have some stupid ass opinions like that, you might get banned permanently. Pack watch, R.I.P. Bozo.
Kind of government and nations that work for all of us and not just the few. That's my critique. It's not that the Biden administration did not do a lot of good things, but it has to be put into an overall context where in the last 50 years, if you can believe it, real weak inflation accounted for weekly wages are lower today than they were 50 years ago. Massive transfer of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. That's not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Trump's fault. That's what's gone on for 50 years. Recognize it. Deal with it. Tell the working class that you understand what is going on in their lives. You're going to fight for them.
The top aide, former aide to John Fetterman and Harry Reid, Adam Jenelson, told the Washington Post that Democrats are preoccupied with the narrow interest of college-educated elite activists more than everyday working people. Do you agree with that?
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying here, is that the vast 60% of our people live in paycheck to paycheck. How do we not talk and fight for raising the minimum wage to a living wage? Dana, on Tuesday, in the election, in the state of Missouri, a conservative state, they became one of the many states that voted, I think, 58% to raise the minimum wage. Now, how is it that in Congress and the Senate, we haven't even brought a damn minimum wage bill onto the floor? We are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. The Affordable Care Act is a stopgap measure. It is not addressing the real health care crisis in America. Why aren't we saying, yes, health care is a human right? We're going to take on the insurance companies and the drug companies. We're going to pass the PRO Act to make it easier for workers to join unions. We're going to expand Social Security by lifting that. We're going to demand that the billionaires start paying their fair share of taxes. You know, Dana, all of these issues that I'm talking about, these are not Bernie Sanders ideas. These are, without exception, popular ideas that Democrats, Republicans, and independents support. Now, the people who don't support it is the billionaire class, and they got a lot of power. But we've got to be prepared to take them on.
But what the voters supported is a man who would never do any of what you just said. I mean, not even close.
Right. But what that man named Donald Trump did do is he said, I feel your pain. I know that you're hurting, and I have an explanation. Well, his explanation was bogus. You know, millions of people coming across the borders.
Why do people just refuse to understand this basic point? If one party is not addressing the pain that people are experiencing, and the other party is taking advantage of that pain and redirecting that anger to, you know, easily attacked minorities, then yeah, people are stupid enough to tap in with the other party. That's it. I don't know how much I can simplify it. I don't know how much Bernie can simplify it. You have to be, I guess, getting paid the big bucks like Dana is to refuse to reckon with that. That's the real problem here. You can't convince someone if they are professionally unconvincible.
Legal, we have to strengthen the borders. That goes without saying, but that is not the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem right now is to have a small number of people on top who have enormous economic and political power. How, for example, can the Democrats not say, look, we got to get rid of the Citizens United? In this campaign, in the Republican Party, Democratic Party, billionaires exerted their power. Most Americans know that's wrong. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so we've talked about the economic issues, which, of course, that's number one. Then there's the social and cultural divide that seems to be happening between a lot of people in America who used to support the Democrats and what is now the Democratic Party, or what's perceived to be the Democratic Party. White voters largely propelled Trump to victory in the race, but there was a major shift. The exit polls showed that Latino voters, especially Latino men, shifted more towards Donald Trump. Biden won them by 23 points in 2020. This year, Trump won them by 12. I want you to listen to what a Latino voter told my colleague Ed Lavandera this week.
We believe in, teaching our kids about God, our Christian values, family values, and the Democratic Party is.
Hey, Bernie, I know you just described a lot of stuff, but what do you say to this insane person? It's like, yeah, man, people are still going to vote Republican, you know? Nobody said if you do this, nobody is making the argument that if you run on improving people's material conditions, that there aren't going to be people that are still nah, f that, I hate that, you know? Yeah, there will still be people who vote against their best interests, especially after they hear, yo voy a votar por Donald Trump.
It's embracing all the woke, left-leaning ideas that it doesn't go with our values.
Do you think it's the Democrats pushing Latinos to Trump, or is it Trump bringing in Latinos?
I think more Democrats are pushing Latinos to Trump.
What do you think of that?
Well, what I think is that Trump,
dude who probably gets bullied by his immediate Latino coworkers who also voted for Donald Trump, is not exactly the median Latino voter, okay? Like that dude in his workplace is getting bullied by other Latino dudes who also voted for Donald Trump. And you're over here being like, well, what about this insane guy? Like, look at him. Bernie should be like, look at this man. Do you think that he's got everything right? He's wearing Donald Trump's hairpiece in a visor. And he went and purchased a sticker to slap on the brim of the visor. There's always going to be insane people. It's like looking at it's like people coming in here and being like, Hasan, you said there was not a single pro-NATO voter out there. Ryan Ruth destroyed that argument. What do you say to that? And it's like, yeah, okay. You got me. You know what I mean? He's in jail, so he was a little too crazy, don't you think? Free him. Free him so he can vote.
Trump has done a good job in claiming that Democrats do nothing more than the woke agenda. In my view, what Democrats have got to focus on, and tell that gentleman, do you want a minimum wage that's a living wage? Do you think health care is a human right? Do you think we should build the affordable housing that we need? Do you think we should take care of our seniors by expanding Social Security? So I think the emphasis has got to be, of course, on wiping out all forms of bigotry. And the Democrats should be proud of standing up for women's rights and abortion rights and gay rights and civil rights. But the emphasis got to be is to make it clear that we are prepared to stand with the vast majority of the people, many of whom are falling further and further behind, while the people on top do phenomenally well. That's a message that, in my view, will resonate with the Latino community and the entire working class community.
Let me give one example, perhaps, of this kind of dynamic that we're hearing about. Joe Rogan, very popular podcaster, he endorsed Donald Trump in the final days of the election. 4 years ago, you went on his podcast. You got a lot of blowback for doing that and for touting that he endorsed.
Yeah, Dems are annoying. What else is new? They love weaponizing identity politics cynically to smear people. Dana knows all about that, by the way. I mean, she does that on a daily basis. Whenever people are like, hey, Dana, it's kind of wild how much you support Israel. That's like pretty weird. Seems like you're pro-genocide. They're like, wow, this is the most anti-Semitic thing I've ever heard.
You. So is this the kind of example of Democrats perhaps shunning or vilifying people who don't totally agree with them?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Look, you can have an argument with Rogan, agree with him, disagree with him, but what's the problem going on in those shows? It's hard for me to understand that. So I think we've got to get, and clearly you have an alternative media out there, a lot of podcasts that have millions and millions of viewers.
Yeah, Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders. So, in the words of Ryan Grimm, Mehdi Hasan, myself, and many others, we did have a Joe Rogan on the left. His name was Joe Rogan.
Get on the show. Disagree with you here. I agree with you there. I don't see a problem in doing that. And you're right. I got vilified by some of the Democratic establishment because I went on Rogan's show. Now a lot of other people are doing just that.
Before I let you go, you were a steadfast supporter of Joe Biden. You were saying that he should not drop out. There's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking going on, and a lot of it is that, in fact, he should have dropped out earlier or perhaps never run for a second term.
I don't want to get involved in that. You know, we got to look forward and not in the back. Kamala did her very best. She came in, she won the debate with Trump. She worked her as hard as she possibly could. Let's look to the future and not go backwards.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much. Congrats again.
Richie Torres, who supports the genocide in Gaza and promotes Islamophobes and anti-Arab race, is now joining in the smear campaign against me. This is the guy who Dems sent to campaign in Michigan. They lost Michigan. He also represents one of the poorest districts, but tweets mostly in defense of Israel. Maybe he thought, to be fair, maybe he thought you were me, Mehdi.